Your soulmate keeps trying to talk to you again and again. Don't ignore this sign, don't scroll, listen to this. This message is for you, and your heart needs this right now, because if the same person keeps showing up in your life, in your messages, in your thoughts, in your dreams, that is not coincidence, that is alignment calling your attention. And listen to this, the universe does not repeat energy without purpose. It repeats it until you finally understand the lesson or accept the invitation, and your heart needs this right now because you've been pretending it doesn't mean anything, telling yourself it's just timing or nostalgia, but deep down you feel it, that familiar pull, that strange emotional connection that never fully disappeared. And don't scroll, because this part matters. Your soulmate is not randomly reaching out, their spirit is being nudged toward you, pulled back by unfinished energy, unresolved emotion, and unspoken truth. And listen to this. When two souls share a contract, separation doesn't erase the bond, it only pauses the conversation. And your heart needs this right now because you've changed since the last time you spoke. You've grown, healed, become stronger, more aware, more emotionally grounded, and that growth is magnetic. It sends a signal into the universe that says you're ready for something deeper. And don't scroll, because the signs have been showing up around you. Angel numbers appearing when you think about them. 1111 when you imagine reconnecting. 22 when you question whether to respond. 33 when you feel confused. And listen to this, those numbers are not luck, they are alignment markers, confirmation that this reconnection is part of a bigger spiritual pattern. And your heart needs this right now because the universe only brings people back when something new can be built, not when the past needs repeating. And don't scroll, because your soulmate feels the shift too. They feel restless, drawn, emotionally unsettled, unable to fully move on, because something inside them knows this story isn't finished yet. And listen to this, they may not understand it logically, but their heart recognizes yours, and recognition doesn't fade with time, it waits for the right moment to speak again. And your heart needs this right now because you've been feeling emotionally awakened lately, more sensitive to energy, more aware of patterns, more unwilling to settle for surface-level connection. And that awakening is what reopened this energetic doorway between you. And don't scroll, because reconnection energy is powerful. It comes with purpose, it comes with timing, it comes with opportunity. And listen to this, the universe is giving you a chance to rewrite the ending, to speak truths that were once swallowed, to approach this connection from a higher emotional level. And your heart needs this right now because ignoring this sign doesn't make it go away, it just delays clarity. And don't scroll, because the reason this feels emotional is because this is not just about conversation, it's about alignment, it's about two souls being pulled back into each other's orbit for a reason. And listen to this, when the same person keeps returning, it's not always about romance, sometimes it's about closure, healing, or transformation, but when it's a soulmate, it's about growth together. And your heart needs this right now because this reconnection is testing you, testing your boundaries, testing your emotional maturity, testing whether you'll respond from fear or from alignment. And don't scroll, because how you respond now sets the tone for what comes next. And listen to this, you don't need to rush, you don't need to chase, you don't need to overthink, you only need to stay present, grounded, and honest with yourself. And your heart needs this right now because destiny doesn't knock loudly, it taps gently at first, through repeated moments, repeated messages, repeated thoughts. And don't scroll, because this is the first tap, the beginning of a shift. And the next part will reveal why this reconnection is happening now specifically and what the universe wants you to do with this moment. listen to this, stay open, stay calm, stay aware, because this sign is not random, it's intentional. Stay with this moment, because what's unfolding now goes deeper than a simple reconnection, and if your chest feels heavy yet hopeful at the same time, that's awareness waking up, not confusion, because this stage is about recognition, not repetition, and your soulmate reaching out again isn't about returning to the past, it's about confronting unfinished emotional energy that never fully dissolved. And that energy has been building quietly, waiting for the right emotional conditions on both sides, and those conditions are finally aligning, and while you've been strengthening yourself, learning how to protect your peace, learning how to trust your intuition, learning how to stop settling for surface-level affection, your soulmate has been experiencing an inner pull they couldn't ignore anymore, a restlessness that doesn't come from loneliness, but from unresolved truth, because when a connection is real, silence doesn't erase it, it only compresses it, and compressed emotion eventually seeks release, and that release is happening now, not through dramatic gestures yet, but through repeated attempts to reconnect, subtle openings, small invitations to reopen the conversation, and what your heart needs to understand is that this phase isn't about jumping back into old patterns, it's about approaching this bond with new awareness, new emotional maturity, and new boundaries, because growth changes the dynamic, and dynamic determines outcome, and the universe has been preparing both of you separately so that when this moment arrived, it wouldn't collapse under the weight of unresolved wounds, and you may have noticed strange synchronicities recently, hearing their name unexpectedly, thinking about them right before they reached out, dreams that felt too vivid to ignore. These aren't coincidences, they're alignment signals showing that two emotional timelines are converging again, and this convergence isn't meant to create chaos, it's meant to create clarity, and clarity can feel uncomfortable at first because it removes illusion, but illusion was never meant to last, only truth is, and your soulmate is being guided toward honesty now, not perfection, not flawless communication, but emotional transparency, and transparency is what transforms connection into something real instead of imagined, and while they're stepping into that awareness, you're being asked to respond differently than before, not from fear, not from attachment, not from old expectations, but from grounded presence, because grounded presence keeps energy clean, clear, and aligned, and alignment is what allows destiny to unfold without force, and this stage is important because it sets the tone for what comes next, whether this reconnection becomes healing, closure, transformation, or something deeper, and that outcome depends on emotional responsibility on both sides, not just desire, and desire without awareness creates cycles, but desire with growth creates evolution, and evolution is what this moment is about, and you may feel the urge to analyze everything, replay conversations, predict outcomes, but this phase isn't asking for control, it's asking for awareness. Because awareness allows you to respond intentionally rather than react emotionally, and intentional response changes energy instantly, and that energy shift is felt on both sides, creating space for honesty to surface naturally, and this is why the universe brought this person back into your awareness now, not earlier, not later, but now, because timing is tied to emotional readiness, not calendars, and emotional readiness looks like self-respect, clear boundaries, open-heartedness without self-sacrifice, and calm confidence instead of desperation, and you've been building those qualities quietly, even when you didn't realize it, and now they're becoming useful, because this reconnection requires emotional maturity to move forward without repeating old wounds, and what's happening now is not meant to rush you into decisions, it's meant to reveal truth gradually, layer by layer, through conversation, reflection, and emotional presence, and that process may feel slow at first, but slow growth creates stability. And stability supports long-term connection, and this is where many people fail, because they rush to recreate old intensity instead of building new depth, but you're being guided differently, towards something more conscious, more intentional, more aligned with who you've become, and that alignment is what makes this moment meaningful, not the message itself, not the notification, but the emotional shift behind it. And the most important thing for you right now is to remain connected to your inner voice. Because your intuition is sharper than you think, and it will guide you through this reconnection without confusion if you listen closely. And this stage isn't about making final decisions yet, it's about observing, feeling, understanding, and allowing energy to reveal itself, because energy always tells the truth before words do. And what's coming next will make more sense once this emotional groundwork settles, because the next phase involves action, not just intention, movement, not just thought, and that's where everything truly begins to change. Stay present with this unfolding moment, because what's happening now goes beyond messages and notifications. It reaches into the emotional undercurrent guiding both of you toward a crossroads. And if you felt a strange mix of curiosity and caution, that's not uncertainty, it's awareness sharpening, because this phase is about discernment, not impulse, about seeing clearly rather than reacting quickly. And your soulmate reaching out again and again isn't random persistence, it's the result of inner pressure building until silence no longer feels safe, and that pressure didn't appear overnight. It formed slowly through reflection, memory, and emotional honesty, through moments where they tried to distract themselves and realized nothing truly replaced the connection they felt with you. And while that realization was growing on their side, you were evolving too, becoming more selective with your energy, more protective of your peace, more aware of what you deserve, and this mutual growth is what makes this reconnection different from the past, because you're no longer meeting from the same emotional place you once did, and that difference matters, because it determines whether this bond becomes repetition or transformation, and transformation requires patience, self-awareness, and the willingness to move differently than before, and this stage is inviting you into that space, where old patterns are recognized instead of repeated, and clarity replaces fantasy, and you may notice your intuition becoming stronger, sending quiet signals about what feels right and what feels off, not through fear, but through calm knowing, and that knowing is guiding you toward healthier interaction, not rushed emotion, and this guidance is important, because the universe doesn't bring people back into your life without purpose, but it also doesn't force outcomes. It offers opportunity, and opportunity requires conscious choice. And the choice you're facing now isn't simply whether to respond, it's how to engage emotionally, whether you approach this moment from growth or from habit, from awareness or from attachment, and that choice shapes everything that follows, and your soulmate is standing at a similar internal threshold, questioning old behaviors, reconsidering emotional defenses, realizing that vulnerability no longer feels optional if they want something real. And that realization is shifting how they show up, even if it's subtle at first, through more intentional communication, through moments of sincerity, through a willingness to be emotionally present rather than distant, and these shifts aren't accidental, they reflect internal change becoming visible. And what your heart needs to understand now is that reconnection doesn't always mean reunion, sometimes it means resolution, sometimes it means healing, sometimes it means redefining boundaries, but when two people grow simultaneously, it often opens the door to something new, something stronger. Something built on awareness rather than nostalgia, and this is the energy surrounding this moment. not a return to the old story, but an invitation to write a different chapter, and writing a new chapter requires letting go of outdated expectations, releasing emotional baggage, and allowing honesty to guide the direction. And honesty isn't always comfortable, but it's necessary, because comfort without truth creates stagnation. And stagnation blocks growth, and growth is what this connection is asking for now. And you may feel moments of emotional intensity, not because the situation is chaotic, but because old feelings are being processed and released, making room for new understanding, and this release is part of the healing process, even if it feels heavy at times, because emotional clearing creates space for alignment, and alignment allows things to unfold naturally instead of being forced. And this natural unfolding feels different from chasing or waiting. It feels like allowing, like trusting the process without surrendering your boundaries, and that balance is powerful, because it keeps your heart open without leaving you vulnerable to repetition of old pain, and the more you remain grounded in your values, honest about your needs, and present in your emotions, the clearer this situation becomes. Because clarity doesn't come from analyzing every detail, it comes from listening to how your body, mind, and intuition respond together, and those responses are guiding you toward the healthiest outcome, whether that's deeper connection, honest conversation, or peaceful closure, and none of those outcomes are failure, they are evolution, and evolution is the purpose behind this reconnection, and this stage isn't meant to rush you into decisions, it's meant to create awareness, to bring hidden feelings into the light, to allow both of you to see each other more clearly than before. And once that clarity settles, the next phase begins, the phase where intention turns into action, where conversations become more direct, where emotional truth starts shaping visible movement, and that's when the direction of this connection becomes undeniable, because action reveals commitment, and commitment reveals whether this bond is meant to deepen or complete its lesson, and the next part will show how this transition begins to manifest and what sign you'll notice when the shift becomes real. Stay centered in this moment, because what's unfolding now carries a different kind of energy, not rushed, not chaotic, but purposeful, the type that builds momentum quietly before revealing itself fully. And if you felt a stronger sense of emotional awareness lately, like you're seeing this situation more clearly than before, that's not accidental, it's growth becoming active. And this phase is about alignment taking shape through action, not just thought, and your soulmate is beginning to express their inner shift in subtle ways, not always through big declarations, but through consistency, effort, and emotional presence, and these changes matter, because behavior reflects intention more honestly than words ever could, and while this is happening on their side, you're also stepping into a new emotional posture, one rooted in self-respect, calm confidence, and discernment, and this balance is important, because it prevents the connection from falling back into old dynamics, and instead creates space for something healthier to develop, and this stage often feels quieter than earlier phases because it's no longer driven by longing or uncertainty, it's driven by clarity and mutual awareness, and clarity brings steadiness, and steadiness supports growth, and you may begin noticing shifts in the way interactions feel. Conversations carrying more sincerity, moments feeling more intentional, exchanges that feel grounded rather than emotionally scattered. These are signs that alignment is moving from the inner world into reality, and what your heart needs to understand now is that meaningful connection doesn't require dramatic gestures to be real, it requires consistent effort, honest communication, and emotional reliability. And those qualities are beginning to shape this reconnection, and as this unfolds, you may notice your own reactions becoming calmer, your expectations becoming clearer, your boundaries becoming stronger, and these changes Reflect maturity, not emotional distance, because maturity allows you to stay open without losing yourself, and staying open without self-abandonment is essential for healthy partnership, and your soulmate senses this shift, because emotional stability creates safety, and safety invites vulnerability, and vulnerability deepens connection, and this cycle continues building momentum quietly, not through force, but through presence, and presence is powerful, because it shows willingness to show up fully rather than partially, and that willingness is growing on both sides now, shaping how the connection evolves, and this stage is not about rushing toward a final outcome, it's about establishing a new emotional rhythm, one based on mutual respect, clear communication, and shared growth, and that rhythm feels different from the past, because it's not fueled by uncertainty. It's fueled by understanding. And understanding creates trust, and trust allows two people to relax into connection, instead of constantly questioning it, and this relaxation creates space for intimacy, and intimacy strengthens emotional bonds, and emotional bonds create partnership, and partnership supports longevity, and this natural progression reflects alignment rather than chance. And alignment always feels calmer than chaos, steadier than emotional extremes, and more sustainable than intensity alone. And as this alignment continues strengthening, you may notice fewer doubts, less overthinking, more presence in the moment, because your nervous system is adjusting to emotional stability, and emotional stability feels unfamiliar at first if you're used to emotional highs and lows. But once it settles, it becomes deeply grounding, and grounding allows love to expand without fear, and this expansion is what's happening now, quietly, naturally, without forcing timelines or outcomes. And the more you remain rooted in your values, emotionally honest with yourself, and open without attachment, the smoother this process becomes, because openness allows alignment to guide the direction instead of control or fear, and alignment always brings people together in the healthiest way possible, and this stage marks the transition from reconnection into rebuilding, not rebuilding the past, but building something new from a stronger foundation, one based on growth, awareness, and mutual respect. And what comes next will reflect this foundation through clearer communication, deeper emotional exchange, and more intentional movement forward, and this is only the beginning of that visible shift. Remain grounded as this next layer unfolds, because what's happening now carries a stronger sense of direction, the kind that doesn't wander aimlessly but begins shaping real movement, and if you've felt a subtle pull toward clarity lately, like you're ready to stop guessing and start understanding, that's not coincidence, it's readiness forming, and this phase centers on truth coming forward, not all at once, not in dramatic bursts, but through honest conversation, meaningful gestures, and emotional openness, and your soulmate is stepping into this space gradually, learning how to communicate with intention instead of avoidance, how to express interest without hiding behind hesitation, and how to show care through consistency rather than words alone, and this growth is significant, because it transforms connection from emotional tension into emotional presence, and emotional presence is what builds trust, and trust is what allows something real to develop, and while this shift is happening on their side, you're also moving into a more empowered emotional state, one where you no longer feel the need to prove your worth, overextend your energy, or accept uncertainty as romance, and this shift matters, because it changes the dynamic from imbalance into mutual respect, and respect creates space for honesty, and honesty deepens understanding, and understanding strengthens connection. And this stage often feels calmer than earlier ones because it's not driven by longing, it's driven by awareness, and awareness changes behavior naturally, without force, and you may begin noticing that interactions carry more depth, conversations feel more intentional, and moments together feel more grounded rather than emotionally scattered, and these are signs that the connection is maturing, not fading, and maturity allows love to grow without chaos, and growth requires patience, communication, and shared effort. Not perfection, but consistency, and consistency is becoming more visible now through repeated actions, reliable presence, and emotional availability, and these elements are what separate temporary attraction from lasting partnership, and as this stage unfolds, you may feel a stronger sense of self-trust, a clearer understanding of your needs, and a greater ability to speak your truth without fear, and that confidence invites reciprocal honesty. Because when one person shows up authentically, it creates permission for the other to do the same, and this mutual authenticity transforms the connection into something more real, more stable, more aligned with who you've become, and this transformation doesn't happen overnight, but it builds steadily, layer by layer, moment by moment, shaping a foundation strong enough to support long-term growth, and this foundation is rooted in emotional responsibility, not fantasy. And emotional responsibility allows two people to meet as equals rather than trying to complete each other, and equality creates balance. And balance supports longevity, and this stage marks the transition from reconnection into conscious building, where both sides begin investing effort instead of just feeling emotion, and investment creates ownership, and ownership creates commitment, and commitment shapes the future. And as this unfolds, you may notice your attachment patterns changing. Less need for reassurance, more comfort with presence, less anxiety about timing, more trust in the unfolding, and these changes reflect healing, not detachment, because healing allows you to stay open without fear, and openness allows connection to evolve naturally instead of being forced. And this natural evolution feels different from chasing or waiting. It feels like participating, like co-creating something meaningful together. And this co-creation requires communication, compromise, and mutual respect, and those qualities are becoming more present now, shaping the direction of this connection in a healthier way than before, and this is why the universe allowed separation earlier. Not to punish you, but to prepare you for this stage, where growth meets opportunity, and opportunity meets readiness, and readiness creates momentum, and momentum reshapes outcomes, and what's important now is not rushing the process, but staying present, emotionally honest, and grounded in your values, because those qualities ensure that what you build reflects your growth rather than repeating your past. And this stage is not the end of the story, it's the beginning of a new chapter, one built on awareness, stability, and mutual intention, and what comes next will reveal how this foundation begins supporting deeper emotional connection and clearer direction forward. Stay steady as this next phase unfolds, because what's happening now carries momentum, not rushed, not chaotic, but intentional. The kind that builds direction through consistent motion rather than sudden leaps, and if you've noticed your emotional responses becoming more balanced, your thoughts clearer, your reactions more measured, that's not coincidence, it's growth becoming integrated. And integration allows you to engage with connection from strength instead of fear, and during this stage, your soulmate is also shifting internally, learning how to show up emotionally without retreating into old habits, learning how to communicate without hiding behind silence, learning how to be present without distraction, and these changes may appear subtle, but they are powerful, because subtle consistency builds stronger foundations than dramatic gestures ever could. And this phase often feels calmer than earlier ones because it's not driven by uncertainty, it's driven by clarity, and clarity creates steadiness, and steadiness supports trust, and trust allows vulnerability to exist without fear, and vulnerability deepens emotional connection, and that deepening creates intimacy, and intimacy strengthens partnership, and partnership supports longevity, and this natural progression reflects alignment rather than chance, and alignment always feels more grounded than emotional chaos. And as this alignment continues, you may notice your own expectations evolving. Less desire for unpredictability, more appreciation for reliability, less craving for validation, more value placed on mutual effort. These shifts reflect maturity, not settling, because conscious connection values sustainability over excitement alone, and this maturity is shaping how you respond to this reconnection, allowing you to remain open without losing your boundaries, and boundaries protect emotional health, and emotional health allows love to grow without draining energy. And this stage marks the transition from emotional tension into emotional cooperation, where both sides begin working toward understanding rather than winning arguments or proving points, and cooperation strengthens bonds, because it builds partnership instead of power struggles, and partnership requires communication, patience, and shared responsibility, not perfection, but commitment to growth, and this commitment is becoming visible now through consistent presence, thoughtful interaction, and emotional availability, and these qualities create safety, and safety encourages honesty, and honesty builds trust, and trust deepens connection, and this cycle continues strengthening the foundation beneath what's forming, and while this foundation is being built, you may feel moments of doubt or hesitation arise, not because something is wrong, but because old patterns are losing relevance, and when old habits dissolve, the nervous system needs time to adjust to new emotional rhythms, and that adjustment can feel unfamiliar at first, but it's necessary for growth. And the more you allow yourself to stay present, breathe through uncertainty, and trust the process, the easier this adjustment becomes, and as this happens, the connection begins to feel more natural, less forced, more aligned with who you are now rather than who you used to be, and this alignment creates emotional resonance, and emotional resonance strengthens the bond without requiring constant reassurance, and reassurance becomes less necessary because consistency provides security, and security allows you to relax into connection instead of constantly questioning it, and this relaxation is important, because it allows intimacy to deepen naturally, and intimacy builds emotional closeness, and emotional closeness supports partnership, and partnership supports long-term growth, and this stage is where long-term potential becomes more visible, not through grand promises, but through reliable action, steady effort, and mutual respect, and as this unfolds, you may notice that you're no longer trying to control outcomes, but allowing the connection to develop organically, and organic development creates stronger roots, because it's based on genuine interaction rather than forced expectation, and those roots support longevity, and longevity is what this reconnection is being guided toward, not quick excitement, not temporary attention, but something real, stable, and aligned with growth. And everything you've experienced up to this point has been shaping you for this phase, preparing you to participate in connection without losing yourself, and now that preparation is becoming visible through emotional stability, intentional communication, and shared direction, creating momentum that moves the connection forward in a healthy way, and what comes next will continue building on this foundation, bringing deeper understanding, clearer intention, and stronger emotional connection. Hold your awareness here, because what unfolds in this stage carries a sense of arrival, not the end of the journey, but the point where everything begins to feel real instead of theoretical, and if you felt a shift in your emotional posture lately, like you're more present in the moment instead of lost in anticipation, That's not coincidence, it's grounding taking place, and grounding changes how connection develops. Because it replaces fantasy with reality, and reality is where lasting bonds are built, and during this phase your soulmate is becoming more intentional with their actions, not acting from impulse, but from awareness, choosing to show up emotionally instead of staying distant, choosing honesty instead of avoidance, choosing consistency instead of unpredictability, and these decisions reflect maturity, and maturity creates stability. And stability allows two people to build something meaningful together without emotional turbulence, and while this transformation is happening on their side, you're stepping into a new level of self-trust, one where you're less willing to accept mixed signals, less tolerant of emotional confusion, more committed to protecting your peace, and this self-trust is powerful, because it sets standards, and standards create boundaries, and boundaries protect emotional health, and emotional health allows connection to grow without draining your energy. And this stage often feels calmer than earlier phases because it's no longer driven by longing or uncertainty, it's driven by understanding and mutual respect, and respect changes the tone of interactions, making conversations feel more sincere, moments feel more intentional, and exchanges feel more balanced, and these shifts signal that the connection is maturing, not fading, and maturity allows love to deepen without chaos, and deepening requires patience, communication, and shared effort. Not perfection, but consistency, and consistency is becoming more visible now. Through repeated actions, reliable presence, and emotional availability, and these elements create trust, and trust allows vulnerability to exist without fear of rejection or abandonment, and vulnerability strengthens emotional intimacy, and emotional intimacy builds partnership, and partnership supports long-term growth, and this progression reflects alignment rather than coincidence. And alignment always feels steadier than emotional extremes, more supportive than instability, and as this alignment continues strengthening, you may notice your nervous system responding differently, less anxiety, more calm, less need for reassurance, more comfort with the present moment. And this change matters, because emotional regulation allows you to engage with connection from a place of safety rather than fear, and fear creates reactive behavior, while safety creates intentional action, and intentional action builds healthy relationships, and this stage marks the transition from emotional exploration into emotional embodiment, where what you've learned about yourself begins showing up in how you communicate, how you set boundaries, how you express needs, and how you receive connection, and this embodiment changes the dynamic, because it brings authenticity into the forefront, and authenticity creates space for genuine connection instead of performance, and genuine connection is what allows two people to meet as they truly are, without masks or defenses, and that honesty strengthens emotional bonds, and emotional bonds create resilience, and resilience supports longevity. And this is the kind of foundation forming now, one rooted in growth rather than emotional dependency, and while this foundation continues building, you may notice moments of clarity arising unexpectedly, realizations about what you truly want, insights about what no longer serves you, understanding about how this connection fits into your life. These moments guide your choices naturally, without forcing decisions, and natural decision-making feels easier, more aligned, less stressful, because it comes from inner knowing rather than external pressure, and this inner knowing is becoming stronger now, helping you navigate this reconnection with confidence and emotional balance, and as this process continues, you may feel a sense of calm certainty replacing doubt, not because everything is perfect, but because you trust yourself to handle whatever unfolds, and that self-trust is essential, because it ensures that the connection you build reflects your true values rather than old emotional habits, and everything you've experienced up to this point has been preparing you for this stage, where growth meets opportunity, where awareness meets action, and where connection becomes something real, stable, and aligned with who you are now. And what comes next will deepen this foundation further, bringing clearer communication, stronger emotional connection, and a more defined direction forward. Remain present as this final layer begins unfolding, because what's happening now carries a sense of resolution mixed with new beginnings, the kind that feels like clarity settling into your bones rather than excitement rushing through your chest. And if you've noticed your emotional landscape becoming calmer, more grounded, more intentional, that's not coincidence, it's integration taking place. The moment when growth stops being something you think about and starts becoming how you naturally move, and this shift is important, because it changes the way you experience this reconnection, not as something uncertain or emotionally charged, but as something you can approach with awareness and self-respect. And during this phase your soulmate is also stepping into a deeper level of responsibility, recognizing that showing up consistently matters more than temporary emotion, that communication requires effort, that presence builds trust, and this realization is reshaping how they interact with you, how they express interest, how they handle vulnerability, and you may begin noticing this through small but meaningful signs, thoughtful gestures, intentional conversations, steady engagement. Not dramatic declarations, but reliable behavior that reflects genuine care, and what your heart needs to understand right now is that lasting connection is built through repeated conscious choices, not sudden emotional surges, and those choices are being made now, quietly, steadily, intentionally, and as this happens, you're also becoming more selective with where you place your emotional energy. Less willing to invest in confusion, more focused on clarity, less drawn to unpredictability. More appreciative of stability, and this discernment is healthy, because it protects your peace and strengthens your boundaries, and boundaries create emotional safety, and emotional safety allows connection to deepen without fear. And this stage often feels different from earlier ones because it doesn't rely on tension to feel meaningful, it relies on presence, and presence changes everything, because it brings attention into the moment rather than projecting into the future or replaying the past, and when both people show up with presence, connection becomes real instead of imagined, tangible instead of theoretical, and this reality creates momentum that feels natural rather than forced, and natural momentum builds stronger foundations than urgency ever could, because urgency comes from fear, while steady movement comes from alignment, and alignment always feels calmer, clearer, more grounded. And as this alignment continues strengthening, you may notice your emotional responses becoming softer, your reactions more thoughtful, your communication more intentional, and these shifts reflect maturity, not distance, because maturity allows you to remain open without sacrificing your well-being, and openness paired with boundaries creates healthy dynamics, and healthy dynamics support long-term growth, and this stage marks the transition from reconnection into conscious partnership energy, where both sides begin considering not just what they feel, but what they're willing to invest, protect, and nurture, and that shift transforms the connection, because investment creates responsibility, and responsibility builds trust, and trust deepens emotional intimacy, and emotional intimacy strengthens bonds, and bonds create partnership, and partnership supports longevity. And this progression reflects evolution rather than chance, and evolution always feels more stable than emotional highs, more sustainable than fleeting excitement, and as this phase continues unfolding, you may notice fewer doubts, less overthinking, more comfort with uncertainty, because your inner stability has grown stronger, and inner stability allows you to handle emotional situations without losing yourself, and this self-regulation is powerful, because it keeps the connection balanced rather than emotionally volatile, and balance creates harmony, and harmony encourages cooperation instead of conflict, and cooperation allows two people to build something meaningful together, and this is what's forming now, not through force, but through mutual growth, shared understanding, and intentional presence, and while this transformation is happening, you may also feel a stronger sense of self-connection, a clearer understanding of your values, a deeper trust in your intuition, and this self-connection guides your choices naturally, without pressure or fear, and that guidance is essential, because it ensures that the relationship you nurture aligns with your authentic self rather than old emotional patterns, and everything you've experienced up to this point has been shaping you for this stage, preparing you to participate in connection without losing your identity, without repeating old wounds, without settling for less than mutual respect, and now that preparation is becoming visible through calm confidence, emotional clarity, and intentional communication, creating a dynamic that feels more real, more stable, more aligned with who you are now, and what comes next will not feel dramatic or chaotic. It will feel steady, grounded, and purposeful, because this is not about chasing connection anymore, it's about building something meaningful step by step, moment by moment, choice by choice, with awareness guiding the way instead of fear, and that difference is what makes this stage powerful, because it allows love to grow from a place of strength rather than need, and growth from strength is what lasts. Stay anchored in this moment, because what's unfolding now carries a sense of culmination mixed with forward motion, like two emotional currents finally flowing in the same direction after moving separately for a long time, and if you've noticed a quiet confidence growing inside you, a feeling that you no longer need to chase clarity because clarity is finding you, that's not coincidence. It's the result of everything you've integrated up to this point finally settling into alignment, and during this phase your soulmate is becoming more emotionally transparent, not perfect, not flawless, but more willing to show sincerity instead of hiding behind hesitation, and this willingness is reshaping the energy between you, creating space for deeper understanding rather than surface-level interaction. And you may begin sensing this shift through the tone of conversations, the way attention feels more focused, the way presence feels more intentional, and these changes matter, because they indicate that the connection is moving beyond curiosity into genuine engagement, and what your heart needs to recognize now is that meaningful connection isn't built through constant excitement, it's formed through shared emotional responsibility, mutual respect, and steady investment, and those elements are becoming more visible now, not through grand announcements, but through consistent behavior, thoughtful responses, and emotional openness, and as this unfolds, you're also stepping into a stronger sense of self-trust, one where you're less likely to ignore red flags, less willing to compromise your values, more committed to protecting your peace, and this self-trust changes how you engage with this reconnection, allowing you to participate without losing your balance, and balance is essential, because it keeps the dynamic healthy instead of emotionally reactive, and healthy dynamics support long-term growth. And this stage often feels calmer than earlier ones because it's not driven by longing or uncertainty, it's driven by awareness and mutual respect, and respect changes the tone of everything, making interactions feel more sincere, more grounded, more purposeful, and this sincerity creates emotional safety, and emotional safety allows vulnerability to exist without fear of judgment or rejection, and vulnerability deepens intimacy, and intimacy strengthens emotional bonds. And emotional bonds create partnership, and partnership supports longevity, and this natural progression reflects evolution rather than coincidence, and evolution always feels steadier than emotional turbulence, more sustainable than fleeting intensity, and as this evolution continues, you may notice your nervous system responding differently, less anxiety, more calm, less urgency, more patience. And this change matters, because emotional regulation allows you to approach connection with clarity instead of fear, and clarity allows you to make healthier choices, and healthier choices shape healthier outcomes, and this stage marks the transition from emotional exploration into emotional embodiment, where what you've learned about yourself begins guiding how you communicate, how you set boundaries, how you express needs, and how you receive affection, and this embodiment transforms the dynamic, because it brings authenticity into the forefront, and authenticity creates space for real connection instead of performance, and real connection is what allows two people to meet as they truly are, without pretending, without hiding, without emotional armor, and that honesty strengthens trust, and trust deepens emotional intimacy, and emotional intimacy supports partnership, and partnership builds something lasting. And this is the kind of foundation forming now, one rooted in growth rather than emotional dependency, and while this foundation continues strengthening, you may experience moments of emotional clarity, sudden insights about what you want, realizations about what no longer aligns with your values, and these insights guide your actions naturally, without forcing decisions, and natural decision-making feels lighter, less stressful, more aligned, because it comes from inner knowing rather than external pressure, and this inner knowing is becoming stronger now, helping you navigate this reconnection with confidence and emotional balance, and as this process continues, you may feel a sense of quiet certainty replacing doubt, not because everything is guaranteed, but because you trust yourself to handle whatever unfolds, and that self-trust is powerful, because it ensures that the connection you nurture reflects your authentic self rather than old emotional patterns. And everything you've experienced up to this point has been preparing you for this stage, where growth meets opportunity, where awareness meets action, and where reconnection becomes something real instead of symbolic, and what comes next will build on this foundation, bringing deeper communication, stronger emotional presence, and clearer direction forward, not through force, but through alignment, and alignment always unfolds in a way that feels natural, steady, and true to who you've become. Stay grounded in this final stage, because what's unfolding now carries a sense of arrival, not a finish line, but the moment where everything you've learned, healed, and embodied begins shaping the reality you step into next, and if you felt a quiet certainty growing inside you, a feeling that you no longer need constant reassurance because you trust your inner compass, that's not coincidence, it's integration becoming complete. And this phase is about embodiment, where emotional awareness turns into natural behavior, where self-respect becomes effortless, where clarity guides your choices without hesitation, and during this stage your soulmate is also reaching a deeper understanding of what this connection means, not as fantasy, not as temporary emotion, but as something requiring presence, responsibility, and consistency, and this understanding is reshaping how they engage with you, how they communicate, how they show care, and you may begin noticing this through steady effort. Thoughtful attention, reliable behavior, not dramatic displays, but actions that demonstrate sincerity, and what your heart needs to recognize now is that lasting connection isn't built through emotional intensity alone, it's constructed through trust, accountability, and mutual growth, and those qualities are becoming more visible now, creating stability that didn't exist before, and as this unfolds, you're also stepping into a stronger sense of self-alignment, one where you no longer feel the need to chase affection, prove your worth, or tolerate uncertainty as romance, and this self-alignment changes the dynamic completely, because it shifts the connection from imbalance into partnership, and partnership requires cooperation, communication, and shared responsibility, not perfection, but commitment to growth, and this commitment is beginning to shape the future through consistent presence, honest interaction, and emotional availability, and this stage often feels calmer than earlier ones because it's not driven by longing or fear, it's driven by understanding and mutual respect, and respect changes everything, because it creates emotional safety, and emotional safety allows vulnerability to exist without fear of rejection, and vulnerability deepens intimacy, and intimacy strengthens emotional bonds, and emotional bonds create partnership, and partnership supports longevity. And this progression reflects evolution rather than chance, and evolution always feels steadier than emotional chaos, more sustainable than fleeting excitement, and as this evolution continues, you may notice your emotional reactions becoming softer, your responses more thoughtful, your communication more intentional, and these changes reflect maturity, not distance, because maturity allows you to remain open without sacrificing your well-being, and openness paired with boundaries creates healthy connection, and healthy connection supports long-term growth, and this stage marks the transition from reconnection into conscious building, where both sides begin shaping something real instead of replaying the past, and shaping something real requires patience, honesty, and shared effort, not perfection, but dedication, and dedication is becoming more present now through repeated actions, reliable presence, and emotional consistency, and these elements create trust, and trust deepens connection. And deep connection allows two people to grow together instead of apart, and this growth is what sustains relationships beyond initial attraction, and while this process continues, you may feel a stronger sense of inner peace, a clearer understanding of your values, a deeper connection to your intuition, and this inner alignment guides your decisions naturally, without forcing outcomes or rushing timelines, and natural alignment always leads to healthier choices, and healthier choices create healthier relationships, and everything you've experienced up to this point has been preparing you for this stage, where growth meets opportunity, where awareness meets action, and where reconnection transforms into something meaningful and stable, and what comes next will not feel chaotic or overwhelming, it will feel grounded, intentional, and aligned with who you've become, because this is not about chasing love anymore, it's about building something real with awareness, patience, and mutual respect. And that difference is what makes this stage powerful, because it allows love to grow from strength instead of need, from clarity instead of confusion, and from purpose instead of fear.